Hi, my name is Kim Adams and I'm the president of the Birchwood Community Association. The purpose of our video today is to share with you some responses regarding some questions that have been raised by the Grounds and Facilities Committee about our trail system. I have with me today Colleen Gillis. Colleen represents the developer and the application for the Birchwood Community Association. Colleen will share with you the responses to the questions that were raised. Question number 1. The Grounds Committee would like a written statement of the original intent of the developer in installing the Lakeside Trail System.
So after working with Loudoun County for a number of years on the Senior Housing Comprehensive Plan Amendment, the developer got to work on implementing the policies that were enumerated in that Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Those policies got implemented here at Birchwood through the rezoning documentation, the proffers, the CDP, and ancillary materials. What the developer had to demonstrate at that time was the existence of pedestrian facilities that could support the entire population of Birchwood, but also connected to the larger mixed-use community, planned unit community of Brambleton, so as to provide connectivity and access to retail services and other things that exist in Brambleton. Thus, the Birchwood developer committed to a pedestrian trail network in the general alignment shown on sheet 13 of the concept development plan in the zoning concept plan amendment. This requirement obligated the developer to build 10-foot wide trails within 14-foot wide public access easements, and specifically required that these trails be designed and constructed so as to connect this property, the Birchwood property, with the property owned by the Brambleton Community Association and parcels west of the property. You can see this and the specifics of it in Proffer 3C of the proffers. The developer has been informed by the Grounds and Facilities Committee that there's a segment of trail from the intersection of the dam all the way to Loudoun County Parkway that's less than 10 feet wide. And the developer has agreed to increase the width of this trail so that it is 10 feet wide. Additionally, you may notice that there is a trail just behind the clubhouse that's 8 feet wide. This is not shown on the CDP or proffers for Birchwood, but was installed by the developer to create a bypass condition for those utilizing the trail subject to public access easements so that they could bypass coming into the clubhouse itself.
Question number 2. What governing authority allowed the developer to install the trails?
The proffers and the approved CDP for the Birchwood community not only give the developer the authority to install the trails, but actually go further and require the developer to install the trails as a condition of constructing the balance of the community. Put more simply, the developer doesn't have the right to construct the homes or any of the amenities without installing those trails themselves. And further, the developer is obligated, per the language of the proffers, to put these trails within public access easements dedicated to the county. Once proffered, the developer is obligated to fulfill the obligation in accordance with the proffered language, which requires these trails to be within public access easements. The trails before construction were reviewed by multiple county agencies, and final approval and review is given by the zoning administrator for Loudoun County.
Question number 3. Is there a requirement to comply with federal or state trail guidelines?
The developer is governed by the approved proffers and CDP for the Birchwood Community Association, and is also bound by the requirements of the Loudoun County Facility Standards Manuals. as was in place at the time of the entitlement for the community. And this is the standard that the developer must meet. Instead of federal or state trail guidelines, they're required to meet the guidelines as set forth here in Loudoun County. Any references to federal or state sidewalk guidelines, trail guidelines, DOT guidelines, unfortunately have no applicability because there's the requirement to comply with Loudoun County's requirements. And given that there are no federal or state funds that paid for the construction of these trails or sidewalks or the maintenance of these trails or sidewalks, means that there's no superseding requirement to comply with any of these other requirements or guidelines.
Question number 4. Outline for the committee the process of how a trail easement is created, reviewed, and approved. If there is a 14-foot easement, why isn't the trail 14 feet?
The developer proposes a trail alignment in conformance and accordance with the approved proffers and CDP. They submit this alignment on a plan to Loudoun County, and then Loudoun County's various agencies review that alignment for conformance with the facility standards manual, the zoning ordinance, the proffers. There's a checking system there by the county to ensure that we are doing exactly as we proffered and promised to do during the rezoning process. Any inconsistencies between what we're proposing and the requirements that are applied to that trail are remedied by the developer prior to approval. Once, though, that plan is approved and that alignment is approved, then the developer drafts the easement documentation. And again, this documentation is reviewed to ensure that it's in accordance with all of the regulations of Loudoun County, the proffers that were agreed to, and the CDP. And this easement is required to demonstrate that there is a 10-foot wide trail within a 14-foot wide public access easement. And once the Loudoun County Attorney's Office reviews the form of easement and ensures that it is consistent with their form, their expectations, and all of the various requirements on the process, then the developer records the easement in the Circuit Court land records of Loudoun County. So it is customary for the easement documentation or the easement itself that's created to be wider than the trail or sidewalk itself. And this provides area on either side of the trail or sidewalk for maintenance and other things that might be necessary during the life of that easement, sidewalk, or trail.
Question number 5. Why isn't the developer meeting the recommended DOT recommendations for shared pedestrian and bike trails, which recommends 11 feet to 14 feet wide trails that are purposed for shared pedestrian and bike traffic?
The developer is building to the standards as approved with the rezoning that was initially approved in 2007. And the standards in 2007 were for a 10-foot wide trail within a 14-foot wide easement. There was no requirement then for an 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 or wider foot trail then, and dare I say that requirement doesn't exist even today under Loudoun County's ordinances and requirements. The requirement was to create a 10-foot wide trail within a 14-foot wide easement for shared pedestrian and bicycle traffic.
Question number 6. What authority or control does the Birchwood HOA have over trails?
All of the land here at Birchwood is subject to the proffers and requirements of the active adult rezoning for Birchwood. And so the Birchwood HOA needs to follow the requirements of the proffers and the CDP and the language of the easement itself. Birchwood HOA, pursuant to those documents, is required to pay for trail maintenance.
Question number 7. When Creighton LLC decided to create the Lake Trail to make it a sales feature for the Birchwood 55+ community, did they plan to allow pedestrian and bikes, roller skates, hoverboards, and similar non-powered wheeled vehicles to share the trail?
The recorded sidewalk and trail easement language provides that sidewalks and trails may be used exclusively by pedestrians and by non-motorized vehicular use. Think of a bike or a skateboard. There are two exceptions to this requirement, however. One is that the trails and sidewalks may be utilized for county maintenance vehicles, inspection vehicles, emergency vehicles, and any vehicles that might need to use those trails or sidewalks for the purposes of doing pond maintenance. Additionally, motorized scooters for the benefit of elderly and active adults are permitted to access and utilize this trail and sidewalk network. But the main function of the pond itself is for stormwater management. And as noted above, noted throughout this, the developer constructed trails in the general alignments shown on the CDP with the approved rezoning. Also, as referenced throughout this video, the developer complied with all of the requirements of Loudoun County, be it in the facility standards manual, the zoning ordinance, or as specifically and particularly committed to in the proffers and the CDP itself. The proffers are very, very clear that the sidewalks and trails throughout Birchwood are required to be connected to the sidewalks and trails outside of Birchwood so as to provide better connectivity. And it specifically references connecting the trails and sidewalks here within Birchwood to the trails and sidewalks in the Brambleton Community Association. This is intended to provide connectivity and to further implement that grand vision of great sidewalk and connectivity throughout Loudoun County.
Question number 8. If Creighton LLC wanted the trail lake to be shared use, did they know the U.S. Department of Transportation recommendations for a minimum trail width for shared paths?
As referenced throughout this video and in the written materials that will accompany this video, the requirement on the developer, any developer in Loudoun County for that matter, is to comply with the requirements of Loudoun County. And that includes the facility standards manual, the zoning ordinance, the codified ordinance to the extent that that's relevant, and specifically the proffers in the CDP for here at Birchwood. The U.S. Department of Transportation, for the reasons referenced elsewhere, does not have jurisdiction over trails in Loudoun County, and as a result, there's no requirement to comply with those recommendations. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to watch this video about the trails. The developer completely understands that when you move into a community, everything is new, and you might find yourself asking questions about why decisions were made this way or that way. With regard to Birchwood, however, these decisions have been made and reinforced and re-reviewed since it was initially approved in 2007. And there was a 3-year review process prior to Birchwood being approved in 2007. Since then, every single plan for a trail has been reviewed by multiple county agencies, the county attorney's office, and others to ensure that these trails are living up to the promises and expectations that were committed to in 2007. We trust that these questions that your Grounds and Facilities Committee have posed to us resolves any lingering questions that you might have with regard to the trails, and we hope that you continue to enjoy your time here at Birchwood and look forward to seeing you sometime soon.